Welcome, everybody, to the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Alex Atzberger, who is the CEO of Optimizely and is the co-founder of the Wonderbond Chocolate Company. He's had a really rich history, 15 years at SAP, German, I should say, born in Hong Kong, had a summer internship at Marvel, which I thought was cool, but more importantly, had nearly 15 years at SAP, where he was president of SAP Customer Experience, and previously the president of SAP Ariba. So, Alex, welcome. Happy to have you on the show.
Hey, Ryan, it's great to be here with you. And, I tell you, I sometimes get mixed up if I was born in Germany or not, because, the accent always carries with me. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's, you know what, man, like I could record the intro 10 times, but I'm still possibly going to jazz it up. So that's okay. It keeps it authentic. That way people know I'm not some weird AI avatar. So anyways, you got some really exciting things coming up. And so we're going to have some world premiere things that you're going to talk about here, which I'm excited about. But before we do that, I want to get real quick into the revenue rundown. And so what stage of the journey are you guys at from a revenue perspective?
Yeah, so Optimizely is now, we just passed 400 million in ARR, Ryan. It's oftentimes not as well known because Optimizely, a lot of people recall Optimizely as the Silicon Valley-based startup that was started around 2008, has a rich history in A/B testing. And then over the last 4 years, we brought Optimizely together with a couple of other entities, and we are now a much, much bigger company. So we just passed 400 million.
Wow, that's awesome. And when you first started, you were 100 million, right? So about 4 years ago?
4 years ago, the business was 100 million. And then we combined what is content management, which was a company called Episerver, together with Optimizely. We added a fantastic workflow, AI-accelerated workflow engine called Welcome to this that kind of enables the entire marketer lifecycle on one platform. We call it the first operating system for marketing. So we're extremely proud of it and happy to tell you all about it.
Oh, we'll get into it in a second. I'm definitely interested in hearing that. And we'll actually just talk about it now, man. Give us like maybe a couple sentences or a paragraph summary of what that operating system is, just so we have some context about your solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I've found in my career, always when I ran different organizations and team, was that most organizations have a go-to system in the organization. So if you run HR, you have solutions like Workday or SuccessFactors. If you run finance, you use NetSuite, Oracle, SAP. There's always like a go-to system that you have. But I tell you, you spend so much money as an organization on marketing and demand gen and everything, but you really don't have the one place to go as a marketer. And what you have is actually you have this swivel share of like tons of different places you go to. And then you see companies wanting to create a great website, but they use the agencies to put it up for them. They oftentimes don't even know what platform things run on. And so in my point of view, there's just been this massive proliferation of MarTech solutions. Probably 10, 15 years ago, there were probably hundreds. Now there are, 10,000 plus MarTech solutions. So our view was like, look, what are the core components that a marketer needs in a go-to platform? And our view is it starts with content. Content is the heart of everything. What we are doing right now here together is content. Everything in a brand, everything in a digital team, everything on a advertising team, PR, everything starts with content, and you want this content to be aligned. So it starts with content, ideation, planning, your marketing campaigns, and then it goes into activation through different channels, your website, other sites that you're on, digital devices, mobile apps, etc. And then finally, you want to optimize it. And all of this, the ideation to the planning, to the publishing, to the activation and optimization, all of this we do in one platform now at Optimizely. And so rather than buying, 10 different solutions and stitching them together, we give you this as one platform, and then you can extend it with additional capabilities. Of course, there's more things you want to do, so it's extensible, but ultimately it's a composable platform, and the best-in-class solutions are content management and the content workflow and the experimentation all in one platform. That's the operating system for marketing.
Love that, man. Yeah, I mean, I've personally seen the challenges of not having something like that in place by just trying to manage and identify usage across social media platforms, improving them, optimizing them, comparing. So it really makes a ton of sense, let alone for people like me, but companies 10 times the size of me as well and beyond, right? So I can imagine it becomes the bigger the company, the bigger the headache when it comes to trying to manage all that. How big is your team right now?
So we are 1,500 people globally. We are pretty evenly split between Europe and the US. Where the leading company for content management was called Episerver. They were based in Stockholm, Sweden. And so we have a great team there. We have a great team in London and Berlin and Amsterdam. So we have quite a distribution in Europe. And then in the US, obviously through Optimizely as a company that started in the US, we have a great team here. And then we have offices also in Australia and a couple of other places to really scale the company globally.
Fantastic, man. So big global workforce. And then what's your primary go-to-market for growing the company?
Yeah, so our primary go-to-market is we have a direct sales team, that we split up by our large enterprise accounts and then mid-market. We also sell a lot, though, through partners and with partners, very importantly. Our ecosystem is a core part of extending and multiplying what we do. Because many companies, start really their journey with Optimizely, literally on their website. When you think about any big company that starts a new website project, it oftentimes starts with the need to say, like, look, we want to up-level our brand. We want to do something new in terms of how we connect with our consumer that comes in through different digital channels. A lot of what we do starts with agencies, or like a WPP, for instance, who would go out and advise clients in terms of what solutions they need in order to actually scale their digital presence. And then they would ultimately recommend Optimizely to be their platform.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. And are you backed or are you bootstrapped?
We are owned by private equity today. There's a lot of different funding history for the different companies that we brought together, but we are owned by inside partners today.
Okay, yeah, very familiar with inside partners. Okay, excellent. So let's get into a little bit more about you and what you're doing. And this is going to be part 1 of 2. And so for the first section, I'd love to really get into the journey you had from the day you started, right? Alex walks in the door, you're at 100 million. 4 years later, the pinnacle of your career, you're being interviewed by Ryan Staley. What happened in between to make that happen, right? And I'm being a little sarcastic, right? But that's absolutely amazing to do that in a 4-year period. I'm sure there's tons of work and weird things that happened along the way. So we'd just love to hear about that journey and what you did to make that happen, and pull from any previous experiences you had as well that kind of shaped you along the way.
Yes, Ryan, this is going to be a story about blood, sweat, and tears, all the way. This is there's a lot to this. I remember walking in when the company was, again, 100 million, was a very good company, but not very known at that point in terms of the ambition, and the vision was lacking, and really about what can actually become. And one of the things I always believed in my career is, you need to basically create a strong sense of mission and purpose in a company. And you need to think about what is that mission really for the business. Now, but I also think when you walk into any company, you need to think about what are the assets that you have, what makes the company special. And, that combination then, gives you a little bit of that guidebook about where you want to create the North Star for the organization on. And there's always a saying I believe in is like the main thing needs to be the main thing. Yeah. And the main thing for the company at that point, Episerver, that I worked in when it was 100 million, was all around content and content management. And that content is the lifeblood of a marketing organization and a brand. And that was always the core belief. And so I always start with like the core belief and something I can believe in, because I need to be authentic as a leader, that I actually believe in that vision for the business. And so when I looked at marketing and the space, and I was familiar with the space, obviously coming out of my history with SAP CX and running Hybris and commerce and other solutions there, was all, that this content is the main thing. And then it was a question about like, how can we accentuate and make this content story stronger? And then, obviously coming in at the end of 2019, the first major thing that happened was COVID. So COVID hits. I visited 2 offices or 3 offices, come back from a flight from Australia. The people next to me is a doctor. He's wearing a mask, gloves, everything. I don't know what's going on. And then, by the time I land, the world basically shuts down. Yeah. So at that moment, you're like, okay, how do I going to continue running this company? What's coming up next? But the craziest part is then over that summer, we had the opportunity to buy Optimizely. And we brought Optimizely and Episerver together to create the new Optimizely. And for me, it was an opportunity to reinvent the brand, to say, like, look, we go in as Optimizely, but we're going to redefine it about creating content and optimizing content. And it worked out very beautifully because one of the first places where people test is on content. The history of Optimizely is a fantastic one because it started during the Obama campaign when Obama tasked 2 Google engineers, or the campaign manager asked 2 Google engineers to help raise more money through the internet. And the idea was simple, like, what slogan, what type of button would actually raise more money? And one of the ways to figure that problem statement out is to test. So to apply a science and a scientific mindset to making decisions in marketing and what content actually works and what web design actually works. And so since one part of this company was all around, creating great experiences through content, and the other one was all about a scientific method around testing, bringing those two together made perfect sense because it actually allows you now to test which sort of experiences convert at the highest rate. And, we do this for so many companies today where it's either about retailers who want to drive conversions, HBO who wants to drive, viewing times, and the list goes on. But I think this combination was, again, that vision. But obviously, sometimes, when you look back, things seem obvious. But when you're in these moments, the question is always like, do you go for it or don't you go for it?
Right.
And when we were in the summer of COVID, and this opportunity came about, it comes back to, like, sometimes in life, you need to say yes to things and lean into the change. And so in this moment, there was an opportunity to kind of completely change the pace and the trajectory for this company. That was the first step in 2020. And then obviously coming out of the pandemic, there was a huge boom. Now you're in the boom phase of the business. Suddenly you can't seem to hire people fast enough. People get, the entire market is hot. You see it in the stock prices, obviously the public markets, and you're trying to keep up with that. And then, the next stage is you're suddenly looking at 2022, that bubble burst, there's a complete reset happening. But while this reset is happening, you suddenly see AI coming up and becoming the big topic where you suddenly see how OpenAI is changing the world. So the last 4 years, nothing of the last 4 years was normal, in many ways. And then building a company in this moment started all with that common vision, common mission and vision. Taking advantage of some of the opportunities that come sometimes along, and just saying yes to them. And then I think the final thing for me was constantly building the team. I mean, we are all just ultimately companies are people, and it's all about like who is with you on this journey. When I come in, typically in an organization, I think, you need to figure out who is truly on the bus with you, who is driving the car, and also really influencing and changing the culture of the company. I've worked in many businesses, obviously at SAP, where there was a very strong European and American culture, and how do you build the balance? And the same happened in this company here. And so for me, it was around building the right culture, building the right leadership team. But now, 4 years later, I tell you, I think I have the strongest leadership team in MarTech at this point. The founder of one of our acquisitions stuck around and is now the CMO of the company. I have one of the acquired companies as chief revenue officer running all of sales for me. So you take the different pieces that you bring together, and when you find the right people, it makes a huge, huge difference for you as a leader, because you can scale so much better. And so now, that we get to this milestone of 400 million, I look back at it and, I think the company is extremely proud of what we achieved. But the most amazing part is that we feel like all the muscle that we built in this time makes it for us so much more feasible to grow the next 400 million. And that's the exciting part, because now you suddenly can do things that you couldn't do before. And maybe the final thing I would say, Ryan, and sorry that the answer got quite long here, but the final thing I would say is, in a company of this size, it's all about execution. I mean, every single person matters, but it's all about actually executing what you say to do. And during the time, I learned a lot, because I think I came in from a much bigger company where, yes, you need to execute. It's because the company is so big, it balances out in a lot of places. In a company of this size, it's your execution. It's everything that you do that matters, every single step. And so for me, there were times where I, had leadership moments where it was tough, because you look at it and you say like, oh, we're doing too much. We're not making the progress we should. And you need to kind of focus, narrow it, and make the main thing the main thing. And when you do, wonderful things happen.
So that's a great background and analysis. Couple follow-up questions before we wrap for this segment. And so I guess if you had to look back, what's the number one best decision you think you made over that 4-year period?
The best decision was probably to acquire a company called Welcome. There was the acquisition of the workflow, AI accelerated workflow engine, that now actually brings our entire suite together. And the reason is not just because of the solution. The solution is a 7-time Gartner Magic Quadrant leader, et cetera, but really about the people that we brought into the company. A huge benefit. When we acquired the business, the founder told me 90% of the people would stay with the business. I told him that never happens in an M&A scenario. Today, we have over 90% of people still with the company. I think that was one of our biggest accelerators over the last 4 years.
Love that. Okay, so that's fantastic. So key acquisition with retention of key staff, right? So huge there. And then what would you say was the hardest point emotionally for you throughout that 4 years that you ran into?
I think the hardest point emotionally was probably to say, to make changes in my leadership team to people that put trust in me when I first brought them on board. But then also thinking like, now for the next stage of the journey, I need slightly different leadership.
Right.
And so I always think it's quite personal when you bring people onto a journey, people that trust you. I think trust is the ultimate currency in life. And then when you recognize that you do need to make changes in your leadership team, it's always hard. I always think people topics are the hardest topics.
Yeah, so true. Excellent, man. Well, we are going to wrap for this first segment. I think you gave a great understanding of like how you got here, the journey. And so the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to go into deep on basically the AI in your organization, as well as the AI integrated in your product. Would love to talk about that. And because there's some really cool things that you're doing there. So Alex, where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Optimizely? And then we'll wrap and we'll see you in the next segment.
People can find out a lot more about Optimizely on our own website, optimizely.com. Hopefully you enjoy the experience there. And then personally, you can check me and get in touch with me over LinkedIn, Alex Atzberger, easy to find. I'm sometimes on there on that platform to also share thoughts about what goes on in the industry. So hope to connect with you there.
Love it, Alex. Well, thanks for being on, man. This was a pleasure having you. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode.